So the last time we had our guest in the podcast back in August, they had achieved a 2-hour, 39-minute Dublin marathon, and they were looking to progress on that even further come October. And well, there's no point in me telling this story. We've got the main man right here. Will Boyle, welcome back to the Any Given Run Day podcast. How are you getting on?
Good, lads. Thanks for having me back. Good to be here.
It's been a busy little couple of months for you, Will.
Yeah, it's been it was a busy couple of months, and then it was not so busy, and we're starting to pick back up again. But it's been a bit of a whirlwind since the last time I spoke with you.
So talk to us about Dublin, because the last time you were on the podcast, you were talking about how emotional and everything Dublin is. Your coach, Gary Hallen, got you to 2:39 marathon. You were nearly a 16-minute 5K runner. You were like on top of the world, buzzing about running, leading up into Dublin. How did that turn out for you on the day?
Yeah, Dublin last year was a special day. I ended up running faster again in Valencia, but Dublin still stands out in my head as just, honestly, it's going to be hard to top the feeling of that day, that run. So I ran 2:32 last October. Was kind of going into it. I felt I had a hunch that I was in kind of sub 2:35 shape, but I didn't know how far under it I could go. And I was just going around the course, and I felt the strength kept coming and coming and coming. I did not know I was in 2:32 shape. I thought that would be out of reach. But then just coming down Northumberland Road, knowing it was going to happen, was just, it was magic. It was magic.
Will,
Unreal.
can I ask, as someone who will never see that shade of the clock, because I know, like, we talk about, and I do want to talk about, because you've progressed and progressed and progressed, and you've done really well, and you've come from slow, and you've gotten really, really quick, and a 2:32 is an amazing marathon. What does it feel like? Where is the wall when you're running that fast? What does it feel like as the kilometers are clicking by? Obviously a little bit quicker, but as you get into the latter part of races, because as you said, you knew then it was on, so you're obviously sure in the body and sure in the mind at that stage. But talk us through that mid-section when you're just in a group, you're looking at elite athletes all around you. What's that feeling like?
Yeah, it was definitely a new experience for me, this Dublin in particular, because it was probably the first time that I was in a pack that was isolated on the road. So like, I know a lot of people's Dublin Marathon experience would be quite a lot of people around them, and maybe not so much room on the road, and that causes its own problems. But there was no one behind us and there was no one in front of us, the group. So at the start, that group is kind of big, and you come off the quays and you get into the park, and it kind of stays roughly the same size, but slowly it thins out, and eventually at some point it does snap. But for us, I had kind of a clear game plan to get to Walkinstown roundabout as strong as possible, and we got to there, and I felt really, really strong. And I knew I felt strong, and I said, okay, like, you have two choices here. You can protect the PB and just stay with this, or you can roll the dice and see what's going to happen today. And I went with the latter, and a couple of us split off the front of that group, and then it really started to thin. But I just felt so strong coming even through Roebuck over onto the N11. I still had a lot of steam there. So when I was coming down Nutley to swing onto that road the RDS is on, I said, I'm going on my own here. And I went on my own. I was kind of looking down on the watch. I swung around that Booterstown shopping centre there at the Merrion, and I looked down at my watch. I was running like 3:25, and I was like, fuck, I'm after going out too slow here. I feel brilliant. Like, this is unbelievable. I'd say 600 meters up the road, I was shot. I could barely move. But I managed to bring home a negative split. I think I ran the first half 116 low, and then the second half like 115 mid to low, which I was happy with. Obviously Dublin is kind of favourable for a negative split because you get that nice downhill running in the second half, but by no means it's an easy second half. But I sort of, it was funny, I had this like delusional vision, one of these things that like a carrot on a stick that just gets you through training, that I was going to go at the N11 flyover on my own, and it was going to be this moment, just these random thoughts you have when you're bored on a treadmill, like, and that ended up being what happened. And I think then when I came down to that last bend we spoke about the last time, when you come onto the canal, my dad was there again, and it was just that same moment from the year before again, but this time I was on my own. There was no one with me, so it was pretty special, man.
When you're jostling in the race, because obviously you're part of a big group, and you've gotten used to racing, you've done a lot of racing, you're training with people in a kind of race mentality, for want of a better word, when you are together in a group. when you're looking at the group around you and few are deciding to go, you're maybe pushing them. Have you developed a racing mentality over the last little while? And do you embrace that side to go, they're going, I'll stay with them? What goes through your head now? Because there is an art to the race as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something I'm definitely still learning, and I think we'll always be learning about. But definitely, I guess since we last spoke, it's something that I have definitely developed a lot more. So like particularly in Dublin, I knew in my head going into it that early on numbers are strength. So you lean into those people. You want to stay with them. You're not trying to drop people on the keys, like. But then later on, you're starting to look at, okay, where can I go? Can I start to turn this up? And that's what I made that move at Walkinstown and just saw who followed, and a couple of people came with. And you're very much like, I think some people kind of say, you're not racing, you're not going to win the race, you're not right. But you're racing the people beside you, like if someone's going to beat you, you should make them work for it. And I also knew that I was in a battle with another guy who's a friend of mine in Raheny for the first Raheny man home. So I was sort of keeping my eye on that as well, how he was doing. Was he going to go with it as well? And when we went, there wasn't very many people that followed. And then I just said, right, this is my chance. Like, I love this sport. I love to race. I'm not often in a position where I can go on my own. And the chance was there, and I just grabbed it. I think one of the big things that develops as you race more, and maybe as you get a little bit faster too, is you stop getting scared of the numbers in terms of pace. So you hear a lot of people speaking about like they're afraid of the pace, or it might intimidate them just looking at the number. But I think as you do it more and maybe get a little bit more experience with it, the fear of that number starts to just dissipate, and you realise if the body's ready to go a little bit more, you push it a little bit more regardless of the number. If it's not, you find out what you can hold or where you can keep cruising.
Do you develop that in training, or do you develop that in race day? Because there's only so many races you can do that pace for so long. But
yeah, for sure.
The guys you're training with, is that in training, or have I got that wrong?
Yeah, I think so. Like as particularly like the style of training I moved into, and then running with guys, I sort of started running with guys who are a lot faster than me all of a sudden. Like a lot of the guys I'd be in the long run with to be under 220, like. And when you're running with those guys and you're running faster in the long run, you stop being afraid when race day comes around, and I think you're kind of used to a little bit of that suffering. Now, don't get me wrong, I often long run faster than I should, but it sort of builds this level of conditioning as well. Mental conditioning and physical conditioning, that when you hit that pace in a marathon, one, it's not too intimidating anymore, and that's regardless of how fast it is for anyone really. If you're running marathon pace in the long run, segments at marathon pace, you get more comfortable with it, you get less intimidated by it. But also just being around lads that at any given moment could probably take your head off if they wanted to. Like you stop worrying on the race day because you're sort of used to that suffering. I actually went to the Fields of Athenry 10K after Christmas, and I ran a huge PB over 10K, and still I had no idea I could actually run that fast over 10K, but the mentality I went into the race was, I'm going to follow the move. Like if there's a pack there and someone goes, I'm going to go with it and see what happens. And it splits very early, and I went with a fella who I know who's a lot quicker than I am. Split through halfway, like a couple seconds slower than my 5K PB, and then just held it to the end. And I wouldn't have done that had I not have just decided to muster up a little bit of courage and follow him to see what would happen. So I guess some races do need to be a little bit more calculated in terms of, you can't just go and run your 5K PB in a 10K. That's not sound advice. But sometimes if you become in tune with your body and how you feel, you could really lean into, all right, there's a little bit more to give here. Let's see where the line is.
Most runners don't have a training problem, they have a guessing problem.
If you've never had your VO2 max or metabolism measured, there's a good chance you're training at the wrong intensity, missing valuable adaptations, or getting your race nutrition wrong.
Or running it all, Eric. Health Matters replaces guesswork with data. With over 15 years of experience and more than 25,000 performance tests completed, they're one of Europe's most experienced performance testing providers.
In a single test, you'll discover your true VO2 max, peak heart rate, your 5 personalized training zones, your aerobic and anaerobic thresholds, and your carbohydrate requirements for training and racing.
Your results are available immediately and are explained in full on the day, so you'll leave knowing exactly how to train, how to pace, how to fuel for your next event.
Health Matters are based in Dublin, welcoming clients from across Ireland every week. They also provide on-site testing for running clubs, corporate wellbeing programs and groups nationwide. You can find out more or book your test at myhealthmatters.ie because your health matters, so train with data and so you can race with confidence.
You must have been pretty close to that, because I had it here. You did the Jingle Bells around 16:05, and then that one, sorry, Bohemians later on. You did 10K around 32, 34.
Yeah, so I ran 32, 34, but like my 5K is like 16:02, like, you know.
Yeah, that's almost half, like.
Yeah, so I had no idea I could do that, and I split it. The first half was 16:16, the second half was 16:15. I literally just now I was in a world of pain. Like there was no cruising, but I didn't realize that I was capable of that. Only for he was opening a gap, and I said, I'm not staying with this group. I'm going with him. And he went on again, but it gives you that push up the road, you know. To be able to do that. And then I went off the back of that into, it was Tom Brennan actually, not Jingle Bells, I went into on New Year's Day. No, that's all right. I went in on New Year's Day and I was like, I should be able to knock out sub 16 here, like if I can run 16:15. It wasn't to be that day, but like again, you sort of learn from things like that, because I ran 16:05 and I had nothing else to give, like. And you kind of look at it and you go, okay, well, I've been doing a lot of marathon work. I'm a marathoner. I work on sort of a lot of threshold development, but I'm not hammering 400s and 200s and these faster 5K style of rep. So it just kind of highlights areas that need a little bit more work for you. And I think as you develop, just going back to that development piece there, you start to understand those things a little bit more as, okay, maybe that's not a bad race. It's actually an indicator that that level or that area of my fitness as a runner isn't as well developed as other areas are. And you just, you know, like I think beforehand I would have picked up the stick and been like, oh, you should be able to run 15:40. You should be able to do this, that, the other. When really you can only do what you can do. There's no real shoulds or woulds with it. It's just about, you know, there's science behind this stuff. It's in the body. It's either there or it's not, like.
Just on that one, Will, because obviously your focus was the longer distance. You're enjoying the longer distance, even the halves. 10K is, again, I think of 5K and 10K, they're two completely different races, as in you can't really compare them. Do you really have to, and from what you've said just there, it doesn't get any easier, you just get faster. But do you even have to switch focus from a marathon type plan and go, well, if I want to go faster 5K, then we're really shortening it down. It's more explosive. We're probably looking at maybe 15K as my longest run in the week, but we're working on faster reps at the 2:45 to 2:30. You know, what do you have to actually go away from other plans and bring yourself back down? And then does the other side falter, or do you just extend that and get quicker over longer distances?
Big time. Like, look, you can't be this perfect. It's like if you look at the elite circuit, you're not really seeing guys that are going out hammering a world-class 3K on the track and then going into a marathon. Do you know what I mean? And if they do, they're very much separated from each other. They're not like 3K marathon because they're working different systems, different biological systems and different mental systems too, because those two styles of training are completely different. They revolve around a lot of the same concepts, but they're targeting different things, different stress stimulus, all that kind of stuff. For me, I'm not an experienced 5K guy. I haven't focused on that. I think I've done two, other than kind of parkrun style stuff before, but I've done two official 5K races, and I've ran the same time pretty much twice. And to me, that shows, okay, you're able to run the same thing again, but you haven't got better at it. And the reason for that is I just haven't shifted to that style of training. I've gone marathon, which for someone at my age is probably suboptimal. But you know, as we spoke about before, that's sort of where my intentions are, and that's what lights me up. I probably should go back down to the 5K, try and raise the ceiling, and then step that back up again. So you hear people talking about that as like, okay, after a marathon, take that time to reset. Maybe in summer, look to work on some of that speed, bring the 5K time down, and that just leases you into sort of this new area where you have a higher ceiling and you can then get better at the marathon again, you know?
Well, we're going to talk about in a few minutes about how, you know, mentally how it affects you or does affect you, if it affects you, your fitness being taken away from you. But when you did the Dublin Marathon and you finished it and you got through it, one, how was the body? And two, did you feel like, okay, I am at my peak right now because I've crushed my PB by a good 7 minutes. I need to take advantage of this. And is that why you went to Valencia, or what was the motivation behind that?
So the original plan earlier in the year was Valencia would be the A target, and in Dublin maybe I'd pace someone through 30k, or I'd run 30k fast and then jog it in, something like that is kind of a long run style thing. But as I said the last time I was on, that the buzz of Dublin, that's where I wanted to go. So I decided to flip it, that Dublin would be the A target and we'd worry about Valencia when Valencia came round, whether I was going to jog around it with a friend or pace someone or just try and run again. I hadn't really decided. Ran Dublin and I was strong, and I said, okay, well, we'll reset here and we'll see what happens over these next couple of weeks of training, and then we'll sort of dictate what was there. Now, I'd be lying if I said when I came across the line in 2:32 in a hilly Dublin that the first thing that came to my mind was I can run 2:29. It's the first thing that just landed straight in my mind is, on a flat course in a fast place like Valencia, I can run 2:29 in this kind of shape. And that kind of stuck with me. I knew it was a bit of a reach. I wasn't saying I can just go and knock 3 minutes off. But everyone I spoke to was like, you have nothing else to give a go here. Do you know, like, you've nothing to lose. If you go out and blow up, it is what it is. And I was perfectly at peace with the idea of going into Valencia and it just going, out the window very quickly because of fatigue. The first week back, like, I was in a lot of pain for sure after Dublin. Like, I'd never ran that quick before for that length of time, and it takes its toll on the body. And the first couple of weeks, I shared a little bit about this training journey on Instagram before, was just like, nothing's going right. Just for those first 2 weeks when I got back. And there's not much time between Dublin and Valencia. So it was like, it was kind of like, oh, can we do this? Are we reaching a little bit too far here? But slowly things started to click, and particularly in the long run, I was failing my tempos midweek. I wasn't doing great with them, but my long run started to get really strong, until my last long run, which was about 4 weeks after Dublin, I think, before Valencia, I clocked my strongest ever, and it was on my own. So I didn't really want to run that morning. I remember it. I was so tired, and this was sort of the accumulative fatigue of, like, I've just done a marathon block, and rather than resetting, I'm going straight into another mini marathon block to try and run another one in 6 weeks. Was definitely catching up on me. But that morning I remember driving into Phoenix Park and it was like really cold. Like, we're into December now, or nearly into December. It was freezing. It was pitch dark and I was just in no mood. And I remember I said to one of the lads, Carl, on the warm up, I was like, if this gets in any way, shape or form hard, I'm not running. End of story. I'm going back to the car. I'm done. I'm going back to bed. I'd no interest in being there. And I was actually really moody. I remember it very well. It kind of shocked myself, the mind frame I was in. And anyway, we did our warm up and we went back to the car to put the carbons on and strip down, and I was just snapping. It was so cold. I just really did not want to be there. And anyway, we got going and there was this like unbelievable sunrise, and I just let out a scream coming out of the car park. I was like, right, get into it here. Like, you're here, you're after driving all this way at 6 o'clock in the morning to go for a long run with the lads. Just quit sulking about it. Got going, stayed with them for about 10k, and then just went 25k solo and just kept picking it up and up and up and up and up. And I remember looking down at the watch towards the end and I was like, I feel so good. How have I gone from this point of like, I don't want to run this morning, to, geez, I've never seen that number in a long run before. And I remember going home that day and I, like my dad, I was asking how training got on, this kind of thing. And I was like, I'm going to do it, man. I'm going to break 2:30. Like, in Valencia, I can feel the shape is there. And if I don't, I'm okay with that, but I'm going to give it everything I have. And I think like that was when it kind of clicked for me. I'm going for this. And I'm at peace with not getting it. And I don't care if it's a bit of a reach, I'm just going for it. And that was the motivation. I went there with intentions of breaking 2:29. I ran 2:31. It was probably the hardest race I've ever ran in my whole life. From 2k in, I just knew straight away when I started. It wasn't like, oh, not my day out there. This is just this. It was just really hard. It was just pure attrition from the get go. I had a fall, and I was really happy to be able to bring home like 45 seconds quicker than I did in Dublin. It wasn't the 2:29 that I wanted, but it took everything from me. Everything.
Eric, quick question for you. What is the one thing high rocks and triathletes, runners and gym goers all have in common?
They all like to take their clothes off to work out.
That's not what it's... No.
Oh, sorry. I have the line. They're great at pushing themselves in training, but not always great at prioritising recovery, Sean.
Excellent. You got it right second time. That is exactly why the Ultra Pure High Rocks Recovery Bundle is such a great addition to any training routine.
It's packed with 4 recovery essentials: Epsom salts for a post-workout soak, magnesium oil spray for tired muscles, muscle cramps and restless legs, Epsom salts gel with arnica for targeted support, and ice cold menthol gel, my favourite, for a refreshing cooling sensation after tough sessions.
You've been using that a lot lately anyway. So whether for your training, for your next High Rocks race, preparing for Trica, or putting in the miles for a running goal, recovery is just as important as the workout itself.
And the best part, you save 10% when you buy everything together in the bundle, so you're getting all your recovery essentials in one place.
So if you're serious about training consistently and feeling your best between sessions, this Ultra Pure bundle is definitely worth checking out.
Head over to ultrapurelabs.ie and check out this Ultra Pure High Rocks Recovery Bundle now. That's ultrapurelabs.ie. Train hard, recover smart, and get ready to go again tomorrow. By listening to this advert, you are, of course, supporting Irish businesses and this podcast. Now let's get back to the episode.
Was that down to when you finished that 220 with the 231, were you like, right, great, I did that? Or any part of you go, if I had done Dublin 30k, jogged it in like you said, and would I recovered quicker and got there for Valencia? Or was just, look, that's it that day, that it is what it is, I got 231, that's it? What was the mindset afterwards?
I was in a funny place after it, man, to be honest with you. I spoke about this in another video with someone. I was in a funny place just because, one, I was so tired. Like, I was really, really defeated in terms of fatigue. And actually, it taught me a really important lesson. I'll never do a double marathon in that succession again. I know it works for some people. Some lads massively benefit from it, in fact. But me, it's I can't do that. My body really didn't want to do it. I'm glad I did do it to be able to understand that, because a lot of people sort of say, oh, don't do that. But I'm sort of person, unfortunately, I need to touch the flame to know that it burns me. Do you know what I mean? So it was nice to kind of garner that experience and know that, okay, Will doesn't do that. But I was satisfied, but I found it hard to enjoy it because I was like, I just need a rest, man. I don't want to do a long run next week. I just need a rest here for a minute, which was another good thing. But I was a little bit disappointed I didn't run the 229, but the thought that actually came into my head was, rather than running Dublin slow and running Valencia fast, the only thing I kept thinking of, if Valencia Marathon was the day of Dublin Marathon and I felt that strong, I was going to do it. Which is obviously just this convoluted sort of like arrangement of events that you can't make happen. But it just shows, like, that day in Dublin, they were two entirely different races. I felt so strong in Dublin. Like, it just, like, I really, really didn't start to, like, I was in pain, obviously, but the bite just got me at the RDS, like, you know, and I struggled home from the RDS. I was able to keep pace, but it was a fight home. But that's almost a perfect marathon, to be able to struggle home for like the last K, knowing, okay, I've nothing more to give here. Whereas in Valencia, coming over the bridge from the start line, I was like, this doesn't feel great. I fell at 6K. I was on my own. One of the lads backed off the pace. One of the lads went up the road, and I was like, looking around, I was like, I'm really going to have to fight today to stay in this race. Like, I had no interest in dropping out, and it was actually a little bit overwhelming. I looked at the tracker the night before, and Valencia actually shows you how many people are tracking you, and there was like 300 people tracking me. And for me, when I was out there, it just kept me going. It was like, it's not that you need to run this for those people, but it's like, people are watching you do this, man. Just give it everything you have. And I had to fight. I really had to fight. I felt sick. I was kind of bored. I really had to force the pace, rather than in Dublin, it was flowing. I was nearly pulling back. A lad in Dublin actually paced us through halfway as part of his long run. And he was nearly trying to take on to the front to calm me down, because I just wanted to go. And in Valencia, it was the opposite. I was nearly begging my legs to just keep turning over. And I bumped into Conal Whelan. Then I was starting to really struggle at 39k, and Conal Whelan, videographer, was there at like 40k, and that kind of drove me home a bit, to see someone I knew, a familiar face. And it just goes to show the power of support. Like, do you know what I mean? I knew pretty much no one around that course. You get the odd shout because you're wearing a Raheny vest and there's Irish people there and that kind of thing. But Dublin was just like, I don't think I've ever heard my name called that many times in my whole life. And it lights you up, man. Do you know, it really does push you on. So yeah, there was a lot of limit testing and a lot of learning. I was glad to carry that over, but I think the whole thing was probably defined by a lot of fatigue in the end.
You started to slowly build back up. We talked about that. You did Tom Brennan. We talked about the 10K. The Bohereen half, then 1 hour, 11 minutes and 51 seconds. That was your PB, and that's in February, March. I can't even believe I glossed over something like that. 71 minutes for a fucking half. Insane. And then it's all systems go towards what was going to be your first major, London. Talk to us about the half first before we get into London.
So that the half was actually up there with Valencia in terms of difficulty. I knew I was coming into strong shape. I had a chat with Matt McConnell, who I actually listened to on the podcast today. I had a chat with him the week before, and I was like, on a good day, it's there. I know I can break 72. That was the plan. Just numbers wise in training, I just sort of had that like gut intuition that I have a right to go for this, and I'm gonna give it a good shot. I'm in good shape. Let's do it. It was a good chunk off my PB though, so it was still a big thing to shoot for. But I was kind of doubting my PB a little bit. I ran 1:14.10 in Antrim last year, but I came through Valencia halfway in like 1:14.30. So I knew I could start to run a little bit faster than that, and 1:14 wasn't the benchmark anymore. But in Bohereen at 6K, I fell off the group with a really bad stitch. And they were only about 100 metres up the road for me, but that's where they stayed for the rest of the race, about 100, 200 metres up the road. And it just made it, even though, you know, there's people there, you can see them up the road, I was moving at the same pace as them, so I couldn't get back onto them. I got back onto them once and got to stitch again, and I had to back off to where I was. So I ended up running the whole fucking thing on my own. Just looking at them up the road now, I was delighted to have them up the road because it was this kind of marker to keep in the distance and just don't let them get any further away from you, Will. But the fight I had to find that day to just keep going. And there was a couple of times I'm like, this is gone. Like, I'm going to PB, but the number is gone. And I was like, okay, at that stage, I learned a new sort of thing that I've never really been able to execute in a race. Is this is not a time trial anymore for that sub 72 minutes. It's get home as fast as you can. And it helped me sort of view racing in a different mindset. It's like, yes, you may have that A target, which might be a time or it might be to win the race. There is a chance somewhere along the way that's gone, you know, and you need to make an honest assessment on the go, whether you're still gunning for that or you just pivot slightly. You don't have to change everything entirely, but I just pivoted slightly that day to get home as fast as you can. Forget about the numbers. Stop looking at the watch. Keep driving the legs. Keep breathing. And at one point I was coming around in the second lap and I was in it, like, just could not shake this stitch. It felt like I was getting stabbed. And Phelim Kelly started shouting at me off a bike. He was like, drive the arms. And I was like, yeah, it's very well said from a bike, isn't it? You know, I was in a ball of pain. I went up to him afterwards. I was like, no, you kept me going there. But I remember hearing him. I was like, fuck's sake, I can't drive my arms here. But we got home and I remember the finish of Bohereen's really nice. There's not much support around the course because it goes on a big loop, but when you come onto the track for the finish, I could see the screen, and it was the first time, because I wasn't looking at the watch anymore. I stopped at 10K. I was like, right, get home as fast as you can, hold your rhythm, focus on your breathing, focus on your body, but stop looking at that clock, just go for it. And the first time I knew I was going to break it was when I came onto the track and I could see the screen, and I just bombed it down the track. I was like, I'm going to do it. And I got a bit excited. It was a good video. I got a bit excited, but that was just the pure elation of knowing, like, you held it together. The odds fell against you, and you just went for it, like, you know. So Bohereen was tough, but I knew then, sort of after that, I had the breakthrough over 10K that was quite strong in Athenry into the half, and I was like, okay, things are shaping up here, because it's hard in training every week when you're feeling tired to know that you're coming on a bit, you know. There was weeks I felt like I was going backwards because it's so difficult to know under the fatigue sometimes whether or not you've progressed a little bit, and those races really served as markers that, well, you're trending in the right direction here, you know. And that's when I started to believe that I could do something special in London then, you know.
Well, at that level, is there, because people are going to start Dublin marathon plans and stuff now, and if they're going online, let's say, or if they're reading books, you see a lot of build up for 3 weeks and then deload weeks and stuff like that. From what you've done, do you believe in that for helping tackle fatigue, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's definitely standard practice for a lot of people. And like even some of the best athletes that I follow, and there's one guy in particular, he went through the NCAA in the States, and he's big on deloads, like particularly when you're climbing in mileage, to just step it down and then step it back up again. Unfortunately, it's something I'll probably have to pay a little bit of attention to now going forward in my own training. I haven't really implemented deloads. I've more so been sort of inclined to look for an indicator from my body that it's time to slow down, which historically worked for me until it didn't. Do you know what I mean? And that may or may not be something I have to address now. Unfortunately, sometimes injuries and pain is just look at the draw. It might not be because you didn't deload, you know, but I'm going to have to look towards those safety measures in terms of, okay, how do I progress my volume back to the state that it was in? How do I find that shape again, but keep my body safe? And I think deload, you know, it's like no one's saying you need to strip back to 4 runs a week from 7 or something like that. It's just take that little bit of sharpness out of the training, turn the mileage down a little bit, give the legs a chance to come back around, and then you can go again. And I think for me, like, particularly when you're, you know, I was running a lot of doubles, I was running 7 days a week, your body naturally starts to try and recover quite quickly because you don't give it very much recovery time. So if you were to take a full day off, for example, you're going to get a good chunk of recovery in, probably because you're replenishing things nicely, as long as your nutrition's sound and your rest is sound and all that kind of stuff. But if you give your body actually a deload week where you strip some of the intensity and strip some of the volume, you're just giving it more of a chance probably to come back around. What I do is not necessarily a planned deload, but what I often do is strip a session. So if I'm on a Tuesday and I'm like, no, you're just too tired here, I'll turn the pace down on the Tuesday, I'll get rid of my Thursday tempo, and then I'll see what happens come the weekend for the long run. And I make those adjustments on the fly.
For you, Will, what is I'm just too tired? Because you talked about like that morning going to Phoenix Park and you're absolutely, you felt too tired in your bollocks, and all of a sudden you found a way, you got through, and by the end of it you're like, oh, thank God I did this. What is the telltale sign for someone that feels like I'm too tired, or you need to, you can't really say in this day and age, man up and just get on with it, or whatever that phrase is now you're supposed to say in 2026.
Well, it's also really hard. It's also really hard to say no when the other fellas are there putting on their carbons and they're like,
that's
I'm here, you're here, what's your problem?
Let's go. You're definitely going to experience both of those things in a marathon block, or just in your running journey in general. There's days, unfortunately, that you'll experience this kind of tiredness that you probably should push through and you know, find a bit of grit and work with it, because you're going to be tired training for these things. But then there's signals from the body, red flag signals and stuff that is essentially your body sending you a request. Will, please listen to me. I need to eat more food. Will, please listen to me. I need to sleep more. Will, please, my legs are still full of lactate from yesterday. Will you calm down for a minute? And distinguishing those things can be hard at times, because also sometimes it's good to run on heavy legs in a marathon block, for example, but you need to sort of know your body is what I would really say there. Right. If you're going to look for things like running on tired legs to build, you build some endurance there and neuromuscular strength, you need to know that it's a safe thing that you're running through, and I think in time you start to build that intuition and you're able to listen to your gut a little bit more. And I'll speak about this, I'm sure, later on in the podcast about that gut intuition when I first knew I was injured. And it's amazing what the body can tell you. I, for one, I know I can't speak for everyone here. I know when I shouldn't run through something and when I should. That morning, I probably look back now and say, okay, that was a red flag. You shouldn't have really, I was super tired in the car. I was in bits, I probably shouldn't be going for a really hard long run this morning. But there's another devil on my shoulder going, Valencia's in 4 weeks. Come on, get up and go with it, and that is a good thing and a bad thing. Unfortunately, at times it has hurt me in training. And again, now going forward and looking forward to, my next journey in running, there are things I'll have to pay more attention to. I think for me, the key red flag indicators I would look for, if I'm really struggling to get up out of that bed in the morning, there's something going wrong. If my sleep is starting to suffer, that's normally a telltale sign for me. Like at night time, I'm sort of hyper awake. I can't get to sleep. And then in the morning, my legs feel like a ton of bricks and my whole body, it's almost hard to sit up out of the bed. That's too far for me. Obviously, there's things as well. Your appetite, if you're starting to lose those things, we need those to function as human beings, never mind runners. So if those things are starting to suffer, it might be time to start looking at that training load, wondering where you can make a little bit more room for recovery, or start looking towards the other things too, in terms of, I need to eat more here, I need to sleep more here. And there was one week in my last marathon block that I had to drop out of a long run after 7K. I couldn't do it. And I went home and almost took inventory with the whole thing. I was like, right, what did this week look like that meant that I couldn't finish a long run, or I could barely get going in a long run? And I said, okay, well, I'm probably eating just about enough to, stay out of a calorie deficit, but am I eating enough for a runner who's running this amount of volume? Probably not. The next week I ate a little bit more, I focused on a little bit more sleep, and I'm starting to feel good again already, So sometimes it's simple. Sometimes you can take a step back and say, okay, let's take 48 hours here now running to figure out what's going on. Why am I so tired? Why are these pains starting to creep in? I would say always, though, don't panic. Just don't panic. It's going to be all right. Particularly, I know a lot of people in the middle of a marathon block, you're going to get sick, you're going to get tired, something's going to happen. Just don't panic when it happens. Let it ride its course. And as you go, just say, okay, what's the next move here in terms of progressing forward, and what's the best way and safest way to do that?
The first major, London, right, coming up in April. You're building online. You're talking about rolling dice, going for. You're probably thinking, this could be 2:29. At what stage did you make the call? Okay, London's not happening. What happens here?
Yeah, really tough call to make. Super tough call. Obviously, no one wants to make that. Straight after Bohermeen, I went up to altitude in Font-Romeu with Essex for a training camp for a couple of weeks, and I knew the numbers that I was seeing, the data I was seeing, just even in terms of like my heart rate at intensity, at altitude and stuff. I had never been that fit before. I was feeling really strong. Things were coming together really well, and that sort of amounted to my last long run at altitude actually ended up being my strongest ever, and I was still 2,000 meters above sea level, So I was just looking at this and I was going, okay, like, don't get ahead of yourself here, but like, I'm in shape, and I think it's okay to acknowledge that as well. I knew I was in really good shape. I couldn't necessarily put an exact figure on it, but I knew I was ready to do something. And the frustrating thing looking back in terms of injury is I was never given a signal from my body that it was time to slow down. I was feeling really good. And that's where these things can just creep up on you, and sometimes it is luck of the draw. I sort of went up there as my first exposure to altitude, and looking back, I think it was just too much stress at one time. So obviously it's a new stressor to be under that altitude, and then to increase your mileage and all of that while there is just a little bit too much. So my honest opinion looking back is I might have got away with it had it been at sea level. But unfortunately I came down from altitude after my biggest week ever. I ran 187k. I came down and I was still feeling super good. I got home and I had travelled, and when I got out of the car coming back from the airport, I just kind of felt like this dull ache in my glute, and I was like, in fairness, I've been sitting down all day. I was sitting in a van coming down the mountain. I was sitting in the airport, sitting on a plane, sitting on an Airbus. I was like, it is what it is. Like, it's just a little bit of tightness. Nothing that you wouldn't run through in the middle of a marathon. Absolutely nothing. Tried to start jogging the next day and was kind of feeling just flat, and that's kind of natural when you come down from altitude. So I wasn't really worried. But couldn't shake this weird feeling in my glute. So I went to get it needled later in the week, thinking something was just trapped. Got it needled and went into the long run at the weekend, and I pulled up halfway because I was starting to feel some pain, some actual pain. So I stopped. I said, look, I'm just going to stop there. It's a key long run, but I'm in good shape. London's in 3 weeks. I need to protect this. I pulled up, and when I pulled up, like, I was in pain. But I said to a guy who was on a bike with us in the long run who stopped with me, I said to him, I was like, I might just jog for the rest of the distance to get it done and just not run at intensity. So I was still feeling fine. I was stretching out, and 10 seconds later, I couldn't walk. Literally just like that, I couldn't walk. I had to get from one side of the park to the other. It probably took me over half an hour. I can't remember in my lifetime being in that much pain.
Was it like a nerve feeling? Was it?
I thought initially it was a nerve because it was kind of down towards my lower back, and I thought it was like that sciatic lockup pain that really intense lower back pain. That's what I thought it was. And I had problems years ago with a sciatic nerve. So I wasn't panicking just yet, because actually my experience with that 2 years ago was I couldn't move for like 5 days. My nerve was locked up, something wrong. There was a disc bulging or something. But I literally couldn't move. And then just like that, it stopped. So I wasn't panicking. I was like, okay, it's this nerve thing, because I was still under the impression it was after the needling. The main thing was in the physio, when I went for the needling, we did sort of some of those clinical tests that you can do on the spot in terms of single legs hops, and I couldn't recreate the discomfort that I was feeling, but it would just randomly be there, this little twinge in my glute. So that was obviously the early signs of it, and then it went in the long run. And from that moment, I was done. I knew, my gut feeling instantly was the race is gone, but I was trying not to lean into that, because I was just holding out a little bit of hope for something. Just in case these things turn around. Sometimes they get better, sometimes they don't. But I knew 3 days later, when I was still in a savage amount of pain, that it's gone and you got to make a call on it. So I went to a physio. Unfortunately, that physio wasn't great and told me to go for a run. So I moved to a great physio who's massively helped me. But her first point of call was to go for an MRI. And it revealed quite a big stress fracture in my sacral ala, which is just to the right side of my sacrum. And just for weeks, the pain was like, it's such a weight bearing bone in terms of sitting down, in terms of walking, in terms of anything. I was just broken in pain, and not so much that, you know, it wasn't even about the race. I feel at this point that really got to me, but the level of discomfort and pain that I was in on a daily basis. Pain just puts you in the worst of form, and I wasn't going around taking that out on everyone or anything, but I just didn't really want to do very much. I didn't want to see anyone, and you know, I couldn't even physically. I was just kind of confined to the house. And what I really struggled with was coming from, like, 1 minute I'm up at altitude, feeling in the shape of my life. I was running with a couple of Olympians, Fionnuala McCormack up there, and I was just looking around going, you know, how have I got here? This is incredible, to not being able to walk down my stairs, you know, and the drop off from the highest of highs to the pits, and knowing then, you know, it's time to call this race was really difficult for me. Once London passed, it was I went over and watched London anyway. I was delighted. I went over. I saw two men break the sub 2 hour barrier. Incredible, but such a bitter pill to swallow. Even though, you know, my friends did well, there was world records. It was a spectacle to be on the barrier that day and see that. But I couldn't shake this thought of, man, I was in that nick and I couldn't do anything with it. And you know, there's things we don't often speak about as well. I wasn't allowed cross train. I was barely allowed to go out for a walk. I wasn't really at all allowed to go out for a walk in those early days. There's things we don't speak about, like in terms of, you know, you run 100 mile a week, so you were eating like a 100 mile a week runner, and all of a sudden you're not doing any movement, and the weight starts to stick onto you and stuff like this. You still want
to eat like 100
exactly.
mile a week.
And you know, I'm a firm believer in none of us should really worry about weight too much, and I drive that to a lot of people. I know there's varied opinions on that, but particularly as runners, it's something I never think about. But it started to get to me, you know, and there was times in my life, and I spoke about this the last time I was on as well, that I was overweight, and then the insecurity started to creep in and all this, and I was just trying to manage all these things at once while trying to make the next healthy decision. And it was just really hard, man. You know, I really found it hard. I found it lonely. I really wanted to hate running. Like, I couldn't open my phone because everyone on Instagram is running, and as they should be. But it was just so hard to do that. I know some of that's like a little bit selfish, but everything in me just like, I don't want to hear about that. I don't want to see it. It get away from me, you know. And thankfully, I have a lot of close friends in the running sphere, and I coach some people. And those connections and stuff to the sport of running allowed me to sort of keep that love flowing and stuff, because I really wanted to just be like, do you know what, just give me a minute here. I just need some time away. And I did. I took that time down to just see what was happening. But unfortunately, recovery was really, really slow, really slow. I couldn't, like, we kind of get to a point where we say, okay, we think you can sit on a bike now, and then I'd sit on a bike and I couldn't move again properly for 3 days and stuff like that. I went to my best friend's wedding, and I was just gritting my teeth through pain all day while really celebrating, you know, such an incredible moment in his life, and I had a great day, but I was just in a savage amount of pain. I remember driving home that night and I was nearly in tears, just from pain, not even from the upset of the whole thing, just real pain. I was like, man, this sucks.
for some people that pain's the food's a comfort, but like not to your level. But like last year when I got married, I was having issues with my Achilles. I'd done the Barcelona Marathon, I'd done a PB, I'd done Dublin City Half, and then I had a bad race doing Quest. I was like, you know what, this Achilles is really annoying me. I shouldn't have, but I'm just gonna do nothing. It was great for 4 or 5 weeks. I put on like, I don't want to say good weight, that makes sense, lead up to the wedding, but I did nothing for another 2 months. But I was like, I joked before the podcast, I was addicted to not addicted, but the chocolate milks, and they're like 700 calories.
Yeah.
But I was constantly eating them. But my training I was doing a small bit of gym, but feck all. And then after the wedding, like a month or so later, still doing nothing. And then all of a sudden, this pouch started appearing around the stomach. And I still actually haven't got rid of them, totally honest with you. I'm like, oh man, where? I'm not, this doesn't happen. This is not,
Yeah.
I don't have this. But for you, doing all that mileage is so much more energy expenditure, and then you can't do anything. And sometimes, like sometimes I'll find comfort in food, not as much as other people, but I do. Like, how was that? What were you balancing? Trying to, like, I'm not eating anything because I can't, because I'm putting on weight, but at the same time, I need to find some sort of outlet.
So for me, I had to make a really conscious decision that I'm not going to drastically reduce my intake of food here, and that was a healthy belief more so than anything. I was trying to lean into the idea that when I get back training and when I get back running, that excess weight is going to fall off me anyway. I'll let that happen in a natural manner. I don't need to start restricting food here. My bones are crying out for a bit of recovery here. Do you know, I've a serious stress fracture. I need food to nurture my body and help me get back to my best. Now, that's obviously the right way to look at things and think about things, but it's difficult, you know. Like, I did have those thoughts of, no, don't eat that. You don't need that. And that creeps in. And I know a lot of people struggle with that in the running world. They unfortunately restrict food and stuff like that to, lean into those benefits of running as a lighter runner. And that's not always true as well. I was 6 kilos heavier when I ran 2:31 in Valencia than I was when I ran 2:50 in Dublin, and I was much more powerful, and I felt much healthier as well, and I can see it in 2 photos side by side. I look healthier, I look stronger. So weight doesn't always mean, you're carrying baggage. Sometimes it can mean you're carrying a bit more power, you're carrying a bit more health. But I did struggle because it wasn't just a healthy weight. It was excess weight was starting to pile onto me because I was eating a high carb diet, and I just looked at that and I said, okay, I need to maintain what I can here. Maybe cut out some of the excess that I can afford to be eating when I'm running that I can't at the moment. Some of the indulgence, that kind of stuff, and just keep the head. Do you know? And I found that difficult. I didn't really want to look in the mirror all that much. But naturally, in the last couple of weeks since training has resumed a little bit, not anywhere near what I was training, but some consistent cross training, some running's back in the picture. The weight I have seen start to go down a little bit, and I know that'll worry about itself in its own time. Do you know?
What was the prognosis for you? Because cabin fever very quickly sets in because you're a person who's always on the go, sometimes 2 a days. You're managing yourself. You're talking about, oh, I'm after been away with Olympians and now I'm sitting in my sitting room and I can't sit down in my sitting room. What did it look like for you? And when you did get with the other physio, it was like, okay, this is what it looks like for the next 3 months, Will. Because I know for myself, I always need something, a goal or something to hang on to change the mindset, and similar to what you've described. What does that road to the recovery, what did it look like initially, and what does it look like now for you moving forward?
Yeah, so like initially, unfortunately, that's the really hard sort of few weeks or months, even in my case, was it's nothing. You know, it's really hard to find that carrot in the distance because you're not seeing any progress, you're not feeling any progress, you're just in this sort of flat level of pain. For me, I suppose the first thing during those kind of weeks was, okay, the pain is getting a little bit more bearable. I'm still in pain, but I can do a little bit more. Yeah, so it's like really, really small progressive steps, but no thoughts of running or anything like that initially. It's nothing to do with that. It was literally just right. It'd be nice to be able to go for a walk, you know, without feeling pain. It'd be nice to go and meet the lads, stuff like that. And once those simple things start to get a little bit better, then the rehab started to progress a little bit. So for the exercises I was doing at first were like, you know, really, really, really basic movements because I can't do any more than that. And then you start to make those a little bit more complicated and a little bit longer and a little bit more difficult, and that starts to show you a little bit more progress because you can do harder things. And then there were setbacks too, you know. So I got cleared to cross train, and then started cross training for 3 days, and then all of a sudden I'm gone back the way, and that's really disheartening when that happens, because I think when you start to see that little bit of progress, okay, I was on the bike for 90 minutes today. That's a great sign. If I can cycle, 90 minutes, then I can cycle 90 minutes every day. And all of a sudden you're starting to think about fitness and stuff like that. And I had to let go of those expectations quite quickly, because I kept breaking my own heart. In terms of, I'd kind of get going just for a minute on the bike, and then sure, be gone again and be taken away from me. So I had to kind of let go of those expectations and really just concede myself to the idea that this thing had its own timeline and it was not linear. And it remains that way. It may not be linear from where I am at the moment, touch wood it is, but I can't hold control of that. I can only do what I can to ensure that I've done the right things to line that up. But yeah, you're tracking those really small things. You're just waiting for the day you could cross train. I knew if I could get to the point, based on my physio's advice and the sports doctors that I was working with out in UPMC, if I could get to the point where I was starting to compound consistent cross training, pain free, then we were starting to look at a key point of progression. And once that started to happen, I started to feel a little bit happier, and I could start to see myself coming out. Lo and behold, I moved on to run walk 2 weeks ago. And that progressed well. And yesterday I was out running 6K, and today I was out running 8K with no walking. And that's been magic. They're my first 2 runs with no walks. It's a far cry from what I was running before I stopped, but I don't think I've ever been as grateful to go and run 6 or 8K in my whole life. It was so nice to get out there, and you're not thinking about pace or speed or targets or what shape am I in or anything. It's like, man, it just feels so good to move,
A lot of people can have, then you've said, we talked about pace early on, and as you run at those paces, you lose that fear of pace. But when you pick up a bad knock, that really is a bad one to put you literally on your back for weeks on end. Does that carry a little bit of fear? Are you going on that 8K going, am I going to take a hard knock now and be back in the fucking cross training?
Yeah, for sure. And it's difficult because naturally when you're reloading the body, and this was explained to me as well, but thankfully I'm working with people who know a lot more about these things than I do, because I would just freak out. But it becomes difficult because there's certain pain signals that are, we don't run through that anymore. But there are also little bits of discomfort that is just part of reloading the body. And you have to pay attention to both of those things. Unfortunately, if you look at my physicality and the state that I'm in at the moment, which is a pretty good state, but all of those things require a lot of attention, and they need to be respected. I just have to listen to them. I cannot run through discomfort, and I cannot run through pain at the moment, because it's not worth it. I'm not going back to road 3 months again. Right now I'm looking to go forward 3 months, and if that results in taking a couple of days off to go again, then that's what that looks like. I have to respect those signals. And I think it is difficult. Like, I was out there running 8K today, and I was completely pain free, and I wasn't in any discomfort, but you're nearly looking for a bit of discomfort every step you take. You're just expecting it to go. But that's the level of pain I was in. I couldn't sit in my desk chair without being in pain. So naturally, when you start running again, I think there's 2 fears. One is every step I take here could be 20 steps backwards, but also I really just don't want to take these risks and go to that place ever again. I want to be calculated about this. I just want to keep moving forward, because you're afraid of the thing being taken away from you again, and that's a thing you just have to manage. The sports doctor said it to me when we were reviewing progress there a couple of weeks ago. It's going to feel strange to start running again. You need to embrace some of that, and you need to respect some of it too.
It's such a rough one in a way, because you were saying you're sitting in the gaming chair, so I maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but like even sitting on a bike would probably take. It's like, so most people cross train when they're getting injured because it's a weight bearing issue, whereas you sitting on the bike probably made it initially worse.
Yeah, so like I the first thing I did before I had an MRI is I started hammering on the bike to try and keep the fitness. Because
of course you did.
Yeah. So like I had a turbo trainer in the room, and I was fucking hammering the thing in my room. I was going up the mountains then as well, and that was fine initially. But then it wasn't so fine, and I had to stop quite quickly, actually, and not for a long period of time of cycling at all. But that was because I didn't have the clarity of the MRI yet. I was still sort of in the dark. It was amazing, really. Just before I was referred to an MRI, I went for I went for dinner with a couple of my mates, and I said to them, I said, I think I have a stress fracture. And you know, some of them were sort of trying to help me keep the head and say, no, you're all right, you're gonna be all right here. Just keep holding on to a bit of faith about London and this, that, the other. And I knew in my gut, I didn't know what the feeling was that I was looking for, but I just had this gut feeling, I have a stress fracture here. And then I went for that MRI and it was right. And it taught me a lot about, that's what I was sort of referencing there earlier in terms of like the body sends us these signals, and whether we like it or not, we're very in tune with ourselves when we run all these miles. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm very used to feeling parts of my body that I need to use every day when I'm out there running. And because of that, when something's wrong, you become very aware that it's wrong. And particularly when it's something so serious that's wrong. I got to the point where even if I wanted to be out there running, which I didn't after that day when it went on the long run, I didn't go out and try and run, except when that initial physio I had told me to try and jog. But that when he told me to try and jog, I could only get 2 steps. I couldn't lift my leg up, and I knew, I was like, I've ran through quite a lot of pain in my lifetime, stuff that I shouldn't have ran through. If I'm in here telling you that I can't run, I promise you there is no way that I can go out there and run, or I would have found it. I genuinely would have found it. And for me, it sort of, one, it taught me to, I do have a somewhat of level of respect for my body in that regard, but it also just taught me to listen to my body. You know, I knew in my gut, I could have gotten an MRI 3 weeks before when I said that to the lads. I think I have a stress fracture, lads, but I didn't, and it didn't delay things. I don't think really, because I didn't do much in that 3 weeks anyway. But it was amazing to me that, like, I can't see an X-ray image of my sacrum, and I obviously couldn't have told you where the stress fracture was or anything like that. But I was sort of hyper aware that was where things were.
So you're back. You said earlier on the podcast, when you were running, you could see yourself running by yourself over the bridge, the N11 and all the rest. I know you only had 2 runs back, but is the mind wandering a different way to okay,
yeah, look,
what's coming up?
It's gone straight there, and I think that's natural as well. Like, one of the things that, like, cross training is so boring, and even though I was desperate for a bit of movement, like, there's nothing enjoyable. Particularly the gym I'm in is like 35 degrees and you're there on the elliptical, and it's just like, it's torture. So you're looking for some kind of thought process or something to look forward to that makes the cross training purposeful. Do you know what I mean? No one's getting on a cross trainer for an hour for no reason, do you know?
Yeah.
See, I do, and I've always trained like this. I always have some delusional thing in my head about where I'm going and when I'm going to do it and how I'm going to do it. And it's less delusion and more like, I know I'm tricking myself, but it works, so I'm going to keep doing it, like, you know? But yeah, I'd be lying. I don't really want to say it publicly. I do have some crazy idea in my head. I'm sure literally everyone can guess what it is anyway, but I'm not going there, because while I'm like looking at that as the crazy impossible carrot in the distance, I don't know what's down the line at the moment in terms of, like, next week I could be not running again to respect my body, and then I could be running again, and I'd just like to see at least a month or 2 of like solid progress before I'm like, okay, maybe I can go there and do that. Unfortunately, the kind of shape that I felt that I was in, I'm not just going to get it back in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. It's going to take some time to just stack things back together. And look, that's just part of the game. Is like, it takes time to compound aerobic fitness and raise the threshold back up and get the VO2 back where it needs to be. All that stuff takes time and focus and respect. And it's part of the reason I love running is you don't get good at running overnight. Like, it doesn't happen. But it's forcing me to relook at some fundamentals. It's forcing me to maybe change a little bit about the way that I train, the way I recover, consider extra things in terms of protecting my body going forward. Thankfully, like, when all of this happened, like, before I went to altitude, I had a blood test. That's kind of something you would do before you go to altitude, just to check like iron and ferritin levels. And that actually proved to something really useful, because I got another blood test after I got my MRI, and I was able to compare them to see, you know, was there any deficiencies here? Was I deficient in calcium? And the bone just went, but, you know, thankfully both times my bloods were unremarkable and of a level that could support the running load I was putting them under, which meant to me, okay, you know, you weren't under eating here, you weren't, you know, all that kind of stuff. I didn't need to be supplementing more vitamin D or calcium, because you start to overthink all those things. Oh, what was it? What was I missing out on? What was it? But unfortunately, it's quite simple. I ran a little bit too much at a little bit too high altitude, and I found myself on the wrong side of the line. But that is the thing about challenging your limits as a marathoner in particular, I would say, is you're always trying to ride this really delicate line. And I don't take any shame in saying that I found myself on the wrong side of that line, because I would do it again. And I felt I came into it calculated. You're looking for that next unknown, that next reach into new territory. And unfortunately, to do that, sometimes you need to take it as calculated of a step into the dark as you can.
It's a very interesting one, because you have to stress the body to adapt the body. We've had 230 odd episodes of the podcast, and we've had people going on the podcast that have gone to Kenya and stuff and done altitude training, but never once do we ever say that the altitude training could be that one extra stressor on top of everything else that is the straw that breaks the camel's back. So it wasn't necessarily altitude training. It could have been just that was that one stress too much on that body, on that time, on everything else. I think when people are doing marathons and stuff like now, we're all not going to Kenya or going Aztecs or going anywhere mountain training, because we don't have it that high here. But there could be everyday life and stuff that people are listening to, or they're just work and everything else. And, that lack of sleep, the lack of food could be that extra stress from the body, because you're not getting the calories in, and you force that one run that's not there. And sometimes, like I've said in the podcast before, we had an episode, I didn't get me long run, me interval run in. I did an interval, I did me calf in. It wasn't the intervals did it. It was, I didn't eat that well that day. It was stressful, other things going on. There was so many different things. You can never really point to one session, one thing. It could be just that one extra stress on top of loads of stuff, and it's very hard to manage.
Yeah, and I think we know about stress stimulus. We know it's regardless of what your sport is, you're stressing into adaptation. That's what we do, whatever sport we're in, for the most part. When we consider stress in running, I think that the two first things that people start to think about is pace and distance. And that could be weekly distance or just daily distance or whatever. So it's intensity and volume. But actually, there's loads of stimulus on top of that, elevation in terms of how many hills are in your run, or altitude in terms of how high are you above sea level. There's loads of different variables.
Even temperature now, people running on a hot 5K.
Exactly. Okay. There's loads of things that we can introduce into the mix. Wind is another one, and wind resistance, all this kind of stuff that just makes the body suffer more, stress more. And we're trying to create this really calculated, well-shaped blend of stresses that stresses us enough that we adapt new levels of fitness, but not too much that we break down. Yeah. That's the line you're trying to find. Unfortunately, and there's a reason that injury is a part of elite level of athletics, sub-elite level of athletics, every level of athletics, is that can be hard. And we can't just say, oh yeah, the line is there. That's exactly how much stress you need. There's loads of things we can implement to monitor that, prick and lactate during sessions and stuff like that, making sure you're sort of doing what you can to stay in the right zones, all that stuff. It does help monitor it, but it's never a guarantee. I know loads of lads who prick lactate every session and they've been injured. So there's lots of different contributing factors that could potentially lead to injury. Do I want to live my life in fear as a runner of all the things that could get me injured? No, because I don't walk around on a daily basis worrying about all the things that could make me sick. I just get on with it, and I do what I can to not get sick. And it's the same, I think, in running. Is I'm not worried about injury. It's a part of the sport. This is my first serious injury. Unfortunately, it's a nasty one, but it's taught me a lot of things about myself too. There have been silver linings to this injury. Unfortunately, they're not the way you want to learn those lessons. It's a tough way to learn some things, but I don't think you get to choose how you learn things. They arrive, and you got to find a way forward.
Over the next couple of weeks, because obviously you're not setting any targets, and I think even if you were to set a target, if we were to just say plus 12 months, you'd probably say that's actually really realistic, but yeah, the person you are, you want to be doing them pretty soon. But yeah, what do the next 3 months, 4 months look like in terms of, I know you're taking it week by week, but what does that look like for you in terms of getting back into your own level of coaching, people coaching you, your different commitments, all the extra, because obviously your identity has become very much running, and you ride that wave of getting sponsorships and trips away, and now it's again we're just, it's like we haven't ran before. You're getting into running.
Yeah, it's baby steps.
So what does it look like for you over the next, with all the other stressors of and the identity piece and everything else that's going on?
I guess the first thing, and that's sort of phase I'm in at the moment, is like, we'd almost call it reloading. Is like, the way I'm thinking about it is, okay, I'm not creating fitness through running. That's happening through cross training and a little bit of running. But the focus here with these runs is to reload the body. I'm just saying, hey, I'm Will and I run again, so that my bones know that, my tendons know that, my muscles know that, and they start to build a bit of resistance to that training load slowly, gradually. From there, it'd be great to, continue to progress that training load up to a sort of baseline point where I can start to regain some of that fitness. Firstly, that's probably just going to look like quite a lot of easy volume just to get those aerobic miles under the belt. There's no point in me going out and ripping a track session in the next couple of weeks. It's not of benefit to me. My heart rate would scream at me anyway. I won't tell you what my heart rate was when I was running earlier, but only a mother could love it. But like, it's just about being patient right now for me, which I struggle with in general, even outside of running. Like, it's not my forte, but I'm in a spot now where there's certain things I want to do in running that require me to be patient, and I want to do those things badly enough that I'll find the respect and the time to be patient. There's loads of other good things happening in my life that need attention too, and it's nice to be able to look at that and have a little bit more time, because I'm not running to be able to give those things the attention that they deserve. But I guess an ideal world for me would be to get up to a point where I can manage 60 minutes, 12k a day for a couple of weeks, and just start to build those aerobic foundations that I need to reach a little bit higher. I'm not working directly under my coach at the moment because there's no point. He doesn't need to offer that guidance. I'm working with the team that are looking after my body, and then at some point I'll get handed back over, and we'll go through that whole rigmarole of trying to find out the right pace ranges to be working out while I'm regaining that fitness and stuff. But look, it's no secret, and it's kind of a funny place to be. There's very little fitness going on at the moment, and I'm cool with that. I thought it would. It's kind of interesting. I'm interested to see how it comes back, how quickly it comes back, where I can take it. That excites me. Matt McConnell kind of said to me, we were driving back from Cork there the other week, that you're in this sort of rare moment where you can redefine yourself as a runner. You can implement all sorts of new things and try and create a new athlete from all this fresh start that you've had, albeit a forced one. Is it still a bitter pill to swallow? No, I'm kind of over it, to be honest with you. It's been a really, really difficult few months, and I always thought, I guess, that would kind of be about missing the race and the big moment, but it's not. It's about all the little moments that I enjoy. I love getting out my front door every day and going for a run. It's such a steadfast piece in my life, is to go out that door and spend 90 minutes with myself, thinking or enjoying whatever is around me. I love that. And I missed that far more than I missed the start line, and that's true. So I'm excited to be at a point now where that's returning. Where does the lead road? Obviously, where does the road lead? Obviously, Dublin Marathon. But there's fat chance of me getting there. In the shape that I would want to be there in. So it's more so like, you can have all those mad thoughts about all this kind of stuff, but like, you need to be realistic as well. And for me, when I'm going back into my home marathon, I want to be able to express the level of fitness that I was going to express in London and have that big day. Am I going to try and force together this scraps of an athlete in the next 16 weeks? No. Like, do I want another stress fracture? No, I really don't. So it's just about taking my time. I would really like to set one goal of finishing the year on a better note than we just had. It's been tough, so it would be nice to finish on a better note in the running side of things. There's loads of good stuff going on in life, but in the running chapter, it'd be cool to say, do you know what, we missed out on that, but we managed to swing back around and do this. And if not, I'll still be running next year.
You still seem involved in the circles. You haven't come from Cork with Matt. I do see you interviewing people as well on Instagram, coming from me and Eric's job as well, all of a sudden on
Will, I
events.
preferred you when you were running and had no time.
Who was I interviewing?
Were you not down at oh fuck, am I wrong? Were you not doing something with Autofuel down in Greystones?
Oh yeah, lads, listen, I work for them now, so there's nothing you can't come for me. You can't come for me, lads.
All right, we didn't feel threatened at all.
I was interviewing the hybrid athletes down there, so
yeah.
You have the runners, I'll have the hybrids, and we'll call it even, right?
Sometimes the hybrid veers over here and I get abused for it, but no, Will. It's been great listening to your, great's probably not the right way of saying listen to your story.
Thanks, Sean. The injury has been brilliant.
Great to know you're injured, Will.
Your
Nothing but interviews, you shite bag. Will, it has been fantastic hearing you're now becoming an interviewer, but it is great to hear how you have taken on this challenge. Great to hear your stories in the lead up to it, and we share in the disappointment. But we do have faith that with time it will come back, and 2027 we look forward to seeing what it can bring for you, and maybe you can finish off some unfinished business that you may have in terms of your goals. So, but thanks, because like so many runners, including myself at the time, injuries come up whether you like them or not, and it's how you process them and how you find other outlets and deal with that. But thanks once again for your honesty and sharing some great insights all throughout. It's been absolutely fantastic once again.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, lads, for giving me the space to do it.
And that is it for this week's episode of the Any Given Monday podcast. Myself, Will and Eric, take care.